Hey there, I'm Jane Sawyer, and this is Jane Sawyer Makes a Paper Mache Pumpkin Basket. Previously, I showed you how to form your own pumpkins out of garbage, and this week we're going to turn one of my paper mache pumpkins into this kitsch harvest inspired basket. In this video, I'm going to show you the basics, and from here you should be able to apply these techniques to whatever sort of paper mache pumpkin basket you would like to make yourself. It's a lot easier than you might think.
Let me show you how.
Let's recap how we got here. I started with a plastic grocery bag and stuffed that full of plastic. Then we used some string to divide that into segments. A bit of masking tape helped to turn the handles of the bag into a stem, and then I covered that in about 5 layers of paper mache. Now that it's dry, she is hard as a rock. To make a basket, we've got to hollow out this pumpkin. I'm cutting a nice wide opening. You can use a serrated steak knife to cut through the paper mache. The little teeth on the knife are great for sawing through the layers of paper. If you want a bit more surgical precision, a pen knife with a fresh blade is a good option too. You'll recall that the handles of the bag became the stem of our pumpkin, so the bag is really stuck up inside the paper mache. If I was doing a project where I wanted to use the lid of this pumpkin, I'd be a lot more careful. I don't need the lid for a basket, obviously, so I'm just kind of strong arming it off and it's getting mangled in the process. Once the lid is off, I'm pushing my fingers between the bag and the paper mache and pulling it loose bit by bit until I can get it out. I pull it out and now I have a nice hollow pumpkin vessel. I use a bit of paper mache to cover up the cut edge and smooth things out a bit. I'm making an armature of sorts for the basket's handle with this fencing wire. The gauge of the wire is not important, it's just a nice sturdy wire that's not too easy to bend. I get mine from the fencing section of my local hardware store. I'm poking a hole through the side of the pumpkin where I want my handle to start. I thread the wire in through. I'm then securing it with a blob of hot glue. I don't use kitchen foil that often in my paper mache, but if you're making something long and bendy, it's super fast and easy. I'm scrunching a length of foil around the fencing wire to bulk it out. I want this handle to look like a pumpkin vine, so I'm making some viney tendrils at one end here. I cover the foil in masking tape. You can skip this step. I just find it makes applying the paper mache a heck of a lot easier. And then I put on some paper mache. You can see I've wrapped the paper and left a ton of wrinkles to give the vine handle an organic texture. My pumpkin vine needs some leaves. This is a sheet of inexpensive craft foam. I cut out some leafy shapes, then heat formed them around the tip of my glue gun. This is a great hack to put some life into flat craft foam with a tool you might already have. And you know, while you've got the glue gun warmed up, you may as well use it to put some veins into your leaf. I made 3 leaves. Okay, this stuff is some DIY gesso / primer that I make. I'll tell you more about this later, but I'm going to use this to laminate a single ply of paper towel. Yes, I separated a single ply onto the face of each leaf. This will accept paint better than just the raw foam and glue, and it adds some nice wrinkly texture. I just put on an extra large piece and trim it to size after it's dry. I want to make some more decorations for our basket here. I'm going to use these domed bits of plastic as the centers of some sunflowers. And we're going to use these paper straws to make the seed pod thingies. I cut these into a bunch of short sections. I'm smearing my domes with a thick layer of glue and then sticking the bits of straw all over. When the glue is good and dry, I'm bringing back my craft foam and cutting out a bunch of petals. I used hot glue to stick them all around the domes. Finally, you can't make a fall project without mushrooms. I'm trying out creative paper clay for the first time. I usually use DOS clay, which is virtually the same thing with a cheaper price tag, so use whichever you'd like. I roll out my mushroom stems and use a good quality white glue to stick the wet clay onto the pumpkin. I just make a little cluster of stems. And then I let them dry. Mushrooms are so much easier if you're patient enough to let the stems dry before you stick on the caps. So I let the stems dry and then made a little gumdrop shape for the cap. I put a bit of glue onto the top of the dry stem and then push that cap down on there. When the mushrooms are dry, we can move on to the primer. I make this to base coat a lot of my projects. The secret recipe is a good squeeze of acrylic paint. I'm using black, but burnt umber and dark purple would work well too. To that, I add a dose of paper mache paste, which is a 50-50 mix of glue and water. I top that off with a few spoonfuls of cornstarch. If cornstarch is hard to find where you live, any cooking starch would work. So you stir that all together. You can add more starch if needed, but you want it really thick and gloopy. And then you just slap on a couple of coats. I really work it into all the nooks and crannies. When it's dry, it gives you a really even matte base to work with. An added bonus with this primer, it's also made everything very hard. I am going to be using a dry brushing paint technique on this project. I have a whole video that deep dives into how I like to do dry brushing. If you've seen that video, you know that typically I like to use 2 midtones and a highlight to build up color over several layers. I'm gonna roll a montage of the painting in a bit, but before each section, I'll show you a little card with a little dot of all the paints that I used so that you can replicate this look if you wanna. All right.
Roll the montage.
The paint is dry on all of the elements, so now I can glue them all together. I spray on some matte clear coat and this project is done. And there you have it, a paper mache pumpkin basket for all your sweets and treats. I think you could do a lot of different takes on this project. You could skip sunflowers and mushrooms and add acorns and leaves, or insects and bats. I think you could change up the paint technique and color scheme and get an entirely different vibe. If you make one, I'd love to see your take on the project. Please give me a like on this video if you think I did a good job. Likes make my freaking day, and they also help this video get pushed to more people. Subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more affordable and accessible art info. I'm posting here as often as I can, and I'm hoping to get into some more really big builds in the next few months. There will be an article summarizing this project over on janesawyermakes.com. Check it out, follow me on the socials, go make a pumpkin basket, and I'll see you on the next one.